All right, everyone, welcome back to Ronin's Den. This is Eric, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Steve, and we are continuing our dive through the different classes of Fabula Ultima. And today we are going to be looking at one of the support classes, the Loremaster. My initial thoughts on this, it's a very situational class, and it's got some cool abilities if you're going to build around them. What do you think, Steve?
I think the Loremaster is interesting, and I think depending upon how good you are at flavor, this class could be a lot of fun with the right type of flavor. It brings thought, or looking at the skills and the abilities that you get for it. A couple of characters from media that come to mind are Sherlock Holmes, Doctor Who, the Doctor. Characters like that, very high intellect, who use their intellect to discover weaknesses or come up with plans. And I think if you flavored it properly, you could have this tactician using the Loremaster.
Okay. Well, let's start off with the abilities. When you take Loremaster, the free benefit for this class is an increase in mind points by 5. So if you're a spellcaster, you are going to benefit from that, or anything that relies on your mind points for your skill rotations. The first ability they have has 3 ranks. It's called Flash of Insight. When you roll a 13 or higher on a check performed to investigate a creature, item, or location, this includes using the study action during a conflict. Study is an amazing action. We got to do a video on that. You may ask the game master up to skill level questions concerning the subject of your investigation. You may ask these questions immediately or save them for later. Whenever you ask one of these questions, the game master will answer truthfully, and you will describe your character's deductive process. The skill may only be used once on the same creature, item, or location. Yeah, I can definitely see the Sherlock Holmes vibes that you were talking about there with this skill. This honestly isn't a class I've touched yet or I've played with. I can definitely see this being handy in dungeon situations or in conflicts that involve a clock, more so than just trying to beat the enemy down and whittle their hit points. What are your thoughts on this one?
Flash of Insight, like I said, it's mostly the vibes and the flavor. I think being able to get more from your study action is always nice. And especially if you get that 13 or higher, being able to ask 3 very pointed questions. It kind of you good?
Yep, we're good.
It gives me that when the doctor and the companion go into this new location and he just kind of looks around and then just starts rattling off facts. Like, you just like, how do you know this? Like, how do you possibly know this much about this? And it's kind of that like enigmatic intelligence. And that's the vibe I get from Flash of Insight. So just for the vibes and the flavor, along with the ability to get something mechanically, I really like it. It's a lot of fun. The next skill, however, is Focused. Focused, you permanently increase your maximum mind points by your skill level times 3. And when you perform an open check using Insight, you gain a bonus equal to skill level on that check. This only applies to open checks. Anything that gets you more mind points is going to be great, and it would synergize so well with any of the magical classes, right? The Spiritist, the Entropist, the Arcanist, any of those would greatly benefit from having Focused. Having 15 extra mind points if you focus fire it to get it up quick, and then being able to use probably your best skill, because most casters use Insight, is going to be useful for open checks as well.
Yeah, I can see this bonus up to your skill level in bonus for open checks that use insight, that'll hit with the study action. And study is broken if you use it. You can get the damage resistances, the vulnerabilities. You can get the entire creature stat block if you get high enough on that open check read out to you by the storyteller. So if they're trying to hide some kind of vulnerability, like this thing's vulnerable to poison damage, because that's a really rare damage out there, you can zero in on that really easily using this skill.
And if you mix that with Flash of Insight, these first two skills synergize together so well. That is really good if you can get your skill level bonus to your study check and then Flash of Insight on top of it. That is stupidly good.
There it is. Our next skill is going to be just a one and done called Knowledge is Power. When you perform an accuracy check, you may replace one of the attribute dice with insight, such as insight plus insight for a pistol or insight plus might for a war axe. This is a fantastic skill to have if you're playing one of those insight-based casters and you want them to use a weapon other than an arcane weapon or spell slinging. Because especially with like my character, Killian, he wields a pistol. He's an intrapist. Being able to swap out my weak dexterity die for insight would be fantastic. I'd be rolling 2d10s for every attack. I'd have that much better of a chance to succeed in hitting. The only other way that you could do something like this, I believe, is with Spellblade, with the Elementalist, but it's not identical. It allows you to cast spells through your weapon, so it's kind of like the opposite. If you're a weapon wielder, go with Spellblade. If you're a spell slinger, but you want to have a weapon to fall back on, Knowledge is Power is a great skill to have for that.
Absolutely. Being able to, like I said, this synergizes with a caster so well because most of them have insight as their highest die. Being able to say, oh no, my dex of a d6, I can swap it for another d10 is just good. There's no negative here unless you're not wanting to use weapons. Like, as we said, it's flavor, it's vibes, but I could see this as being that blade singer, the person who's wielding a rapier while casting spells in their other hand. It gives that swashbuckling magician vibe, and I really, really enjoy it. The next skill on the list is Quick Assessment. At the start of conflict, you may spend up to your skill level times 5 mind points. For every 5 mind points you spend this way, choose one option. Choose a creature you can see and the GM reveals one of their traits. Or you can name a damage type and choose a creature that you can see, and the GM has to tell you what the affinity to that damage type is. So basically, I spend 10 mind points. I say, hey, poison, fire. What is their affinity to them? And the GM has to tell you they're vulnerable, they're resistant, or they absorb it, or they're nothing. It's just normal damage. This is one of those risky ones, though, because you're spending mind points, and you may not actually get anything actionable out of it. But if you do, and you hit that vulnerability, and now you can focus fire it, vulnerabilities can make a very dangerous encounter negligible.
Yeah. No notes. I just completely agree with everything you said there. It's something that you could use as a synergy skill with this just to kind of offset that cost. Might be Entropist with Drain Spirit. That'll prevent you from, at least give you some way to regain some mana during the fight with it. But yeah, other than that, great skill, but it is a gamble. And then that brings us to our last one, Trained Memory. You may perfectly recall details of any scene you have visited within the past week. You can go back in time within your mind in order to examine and investigate such scenes again. Your flash of insight skill will apply to these memories as well. So this is super handy when you have a player who doesn't take good notes, and they can rely. The DM does take decent notes. You can say, "Hey, I don't know what's going on here. What were we supposed to do with this person again? You know what? Train memory. Tell me everything about that conversation we had with that king before we set out." Or to try and find a loophole in a contract or something. And having it mesh with your flash of insight is just an extra, little bonus as well.
Yeah. The thing about trained memory is it is one of those skills that is absolutely just flavor. There's really no mechanical benefit to this skill other than, hey, I don't remember that conversation, DM. Tell me what I need to know and what I would remember from this. Like, outside of that, this is purely flavor. It is just that eidetic memory of being able to recall things like in perfect memory of the time before. And I don't think I would put this high on my list of ones to take from this class. But if you needed just something for fun, why not?
I can see it.
But yeah, that is the Loremaster. As we stated, kind of just a fun little addition to something. I don't think I would ever use it as my core build, but to throw it on top of a caster or to throw it on something else, I don't think you could go wrong. And that's really my final thoughts on it.
Yeah, my final thoughts are pretty similar. This isn't something that I would chase after, I don't think. There are things in here that I like, but for my personal builds, I wouldn't use more than the ability to get more mind points, to be honest. That's just my personal play style. But I definitely think if you're going for that investigative type character, this is definitely something you want to put on there for those investigative skills.
And that's the Loremaster. As always, I'm Steve. That's Eric. This is Ronin's Den. We are enjoying doing these videos. We are thinking of starting to do some character builds in the future. So if you have any characters that you want to see made in the Fabula Ultima system, leave them in the comments below. We will gladly make those characters first before we do our own. I think the one character we were talking about for sure doing was Dante from the new Netflix Devil May Cry series and the video games from way back when. But yeah, if you have any that you want to see from us, let us know. We're more than willing to create characters for that. However, the caveat is please don't say someone like Goku or these world-destroying characters. They just don't mesh with the vibe of Fabula Ultima. Someone like Link, Dante, Virgil, characters like that are more grounded and down to earth would be appreciated. As always, if you like this video, please hit the like, share, and subscribe. It means the world to us, and we will catch you in the next video.